So, welcome back, everyone, as I see more people logging on. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is our final session for today. Super excited. Today, we have with us our speaker, Miss Tara Montgomery. She is from Johnson County, which my parents both grew up in Johnson County.
Oh, cool.
And so, familiar with that area. My grandmother still lives out there, and awesome, awesome. Um, she teaches at Porter Elementary, and she's a member of our Renaissance grant. And so we're going to explore how art can be used as a powerful tool for emotional regulation and self-expression. So super excited about that. I really love that social emotional connection because students need that. So without further ado, Ms. Tara, I'll have you take it away. In Also, a friendly reminder just to make sure you have your cameras turned on. And if you learned something from this session or a session that you've been on previously, just to um, hashtag us on X. So hashtag KEDC or hashtag EdTech Unleashed. So go ahead and take it away, Miss Tara.
All right, I am Tara Montgomery. Like she said, I teach in Johnson County. I teach at Porter Elementary. This is my 12th year teaching there. This is my third year teaching kindergarten through sixth grade stream. So I've had to learn what I can about implementing more art activities. And then recently, I came across a training a few years ago about social emotional learning and how we can incorporate that more into not just an art classroom, but any art or any classroom. So this is all about social emotional learning activities that teachers can use in their classroom with their students. So our learning objectives today, hopefully you'll leave understanding how art can help students express emotions and regulate their feelings. Learn simple art activities that support emotional well being and stress relief. Apply art based strategies to create a safe, supportive classroom and environment. And I love how this talks about emotional well being and stress relief because I think that's one thing that we have seen more of in our students in our schools is students get stressed out. Like anxiety is at a whole new level. Anxiety is now a part of a lot of our students' lives, and it's hard, I think, for us older teachers to understand because maybe didn't experience that when we were students like they experience it now. So if you want to share in the chat just to kind of get us started, what are you feeling today on this rainy Saturday? So if you want to look at the puppy scale, I am now realizing I cannot see the chat, but I will um, just assume you guys will put your number in there. I'm going to say I'm at a 2. I love the little pink bow. So that's kind of how I'm feeling today. And you guys can do this in your classroom just to kind of set the tone for the day um, and the mood. Get the you get your students kind of feeling comfortable. All right, so we'll get started. Start the day with a simple greeting. A lot of our teachers have a poster or a sign, something like this, hanging outside their door, their classroom door, and they'll have students either point or tap. I've seen some teachers have them do like a quick fist bump just to show what kind of greeting they're feeling that morning with their teacher. And I do have a short video here. We probably won't have time to watch all of it.
Hey, just letting you know we can't hear the sound on it.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad that you let me know that. um, well, it just basically talked about how important it is to start your students' day with a simple greeting. The teacher that was in the video, she just had three options. She didn't have a poster or anything, but students did it every day. It was a routine, so they knew what to expect. And she got down on eye level with her students just to build that better connection with them. Asked, are we going to have a great day today? And she talks about how she doesn't just go in her classroom and say, come on in, let's just start this day. So she makes it very meaningful on how she even greets her students in the morning. And I just think that's great. So warm up that you can do with your students. I know we've probably all seen the one with where you fold the piece of paper, you put your name on it. This one's just a little bit different because on the inside, you can have your students either write or draw something about themselves that people may not know, especially for the beginning of the year or the start of a new semester when you're trying to get to know your students. And then you can have them share it with a partner or their table or even the classroom. And then this one is really fun, the blind contour drawing. So you would just have your students get with a partner and they can't look down at their paper, but they're going to try to draw the outline of their partner's face without looking. And it's just a really fun process that the students really enjoy and even adults. So our social emotional learning competencies, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. So today I am going to show you some art activities that you can use that will hit one of these five competencies in your classroom. So art checks all the boxes. So we can use art to help develop social and emotional well-being. So for social, if you use some of these art activities, it helps our students recognize how they're feeling. It helps them understand the impact of their actions on their peers or their teachers. Other perspective taking, understanding cultural uniqueness, reading nonverbal cues. I feel like that's a huge one. I told you guys earlier, I have a 5-year-old and he is still learning those nonverbal cues, appreciating different viewpoints and their culture, taking turns, listening and sharing with one another, problem solving, connecting through a shared experience, connecting with identifying cultural differences and
Miss
similarities, our
Miss Tara,
teamwork.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
that's
your
okay.
screen is black, and I'm not sure. Oh,
Okay. Oh, 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 okay.
sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
just wanted to. It looks like I can see, we can see now, or at least I can see. So if
Should I keep it like this, or maybe if I put it in slideshow, it does that? Does it matter, you think?
try slideshow, and let's see if it's okay
Okay.
because we saw it earlier. So okay,
Is that
I think
better?
yeah, I think it looks great. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Please tell me. I don't want to seem silly just talking and you guys can't even see it.
No worries.
Okay. And then with emotional, identifying and labeling feelings, developing coping strategies for self-awareness, awareness of cultural uniqueness, self-management and impulse control. Again, I think those are huge, especially for our little people. Those are skills that have to be learned. And if we do not teach them, they will try to find ways, teach themselves, but in an unhealthy way. Being present in the moment, decreasing self judgment, embracing self definition, managing stress when they're frustrated, developing mastery, self esteem, and increasing self identity. So, hopefully, some of these activities you can take back to your classrooms, whether you're an art teacher or not, and use those to build those skills. So, just something to think about. If you want to type an answer in the chat box, you can. Can someone let me know if you can see my screen? Is it still good?
Yep, everything's good.
Awesome. Okay. So just be thinking, how would you like to use art in your classroom to promote social emotional learning? So if we would want to make a cake, we know that there are vital ingredients. So these are the ingredients for creating social and emotional learning with art, and it's just the five competencies. So, working with mistakes. When we're working with mistakes, obviously children can get very frustrated. That's where we can use that social and emotional learning in art to help them regulate those emotions. So, we want to help our little artists identify what they're unhappy with, maybe in their art, but also bring awareness to what is working with their art. We want to help our little artists solve problems and maybe look at potential steps to make adjustments to make their artwork better. And then we always want to resist the temptation to say how the art looks. And I know this was super hard for me because I teach over 400 students in my school. So I always have students bringing me, Miss Montgomery, I made this for you. And I used to say, oh, that looks so great. Or there might have even been times when I said, that's great. That looks awesome. What is it? So I've learned a lot about resisting the temptation to say how the art looks. And you want to focus more on the effort of the art. So, our first component here is self awareness. Self awareness is an important skill that can help us reflect on how and why we think and feel the way we do. When we have self awareness, we are more likely to be able to ask for what we need. And so, that is an awesome skill to teach our students. And our first activity here that will teach self awareness is called a mood meter. And so you can just explain this to your students as you're introducing the activity. Our emotions come in so many shapes and sizes. Practice self awareness by creating a tool that helps us identify how we're feeling. And then let's talk about the four emotional states. Can you think of a time when you experienced one of these emotions? So, if you just had some pretty basic materials, a journal, or paper. And I know if you kept this in a journal, this is something that you could always have your students refer back to if they're having some sort of emotion. Let's get out our mood meter. Can you explain to me how you're feeling? Why are you feeling this way? And that helps with self awareness. And then any kind of drawing tool, crayons, colored pencils, markers, and then optional is the watercolor paint. This I actually did this with my students with watercolor paint, but you could do it with any of these tools. So you would start by having your students draw a cross on their paper or their journal, just like this, and then label the four states. I learned really quickly with my kindergarten, first graders, that it took almost a whole class period just for them to draw the cross and label it. So if you would rather print like have copies of this already on a template just to save time, that would be super beneficial for your little ones. And then what colors, shapes, lines, or symbols come to your mind when you're feeling angry or sad or excited or calm? And just have them, let's think about it first before we start. And then I would set a timer just to kind of guide them, keep them on task, on track. Um, and then when they're finished, they can point to, again, this brings self awareness. They can point to the area that they're feeling on their mood meter. And I'm going to skip that. Here is an example of the watercolor paint. And so they can use any color they want. It is just to be creative. Again, you can keep this and refer back to it. Explain to me how you're feeling. Why are we feeling that way? And then this is a video. It's probably about 6 minutes long, taking you step by step on how to do that activity. And we do not have time for that, so I'm going to skip over that. Next, we have social awareness. Social awareness is all about understanding and celebrating our differences so we can create safe spaces while everyone feels heard and respected. When we learn about ourselves and others, we can create meaningful relationships. So we want our students to be socially aware that we do have differences. We are different from, some of our peers, but that's okay. We can still feel heard. We can still be respectful, even though we have different views on things. So this leads us to our next activity, which is called a community circle. It kind of makes you think of circle time, if you've ever done that in your classroom. So community circle is just where you're going to have your students come together sit in a circle, and you're going to go over your guidelines of what this circle means, why we're going to do it, and then kind of the rules on being respectful. This is a safe place. We're going to listen, we're going to share our thoughts and feelings, and the goal here is to build trust, strengthen relationships, and solve problems by promoting understanding and respect. So maybe there's something going on in your classroom and you have some students that are disagreeing, or there's a problem that needs to be solved. This would be a good time to call a community circle. Let's sit down and have a respectful conversation. Let's communicate with one another. How can we solve this? And then everyone in the circle has a chance to speak, and the focus is on healing, support, and finding positive solutions together. So the guidelines first is respect the talking piece. Whoever has the talking piece, it's their turn to talk. Speak from the heart, speak your truth. You can feel comfortable to speak truthfully, explain your perspective on things, and then even your experience. Listen from the heart. So not only do we speak from the heart, but we also need to listen. Keep an open mind about having different viewpoints. Trust you will know what to say. So this is not something to get nervous about. And we want you to be comfortable, and it's okay to just express how you're feeling, and then say just enough. So we do want to keep it kind of short so that everyone gets a chance. And I don't know how many of you guys, my school is the Lighthouse School for Leader and Me, and we actually got these little talking sticks. And it was just a little, it almost looked like a pencil, and it had these tassels, these colorful tassels around the top. And we would always use those as our talking sticks. But you can use anything, a stuffed animal, a pencil. I've seen some people use rubber ducks, just whatever you want to use in your classroom. And here are the steps that make it a little bit different than your practical circle time. And this is how it relates more to art. So you would have your students gather in their circle, begin with a co-regulation strategy. Just take a big, deep belly breath, sorry, just to get everyone comfortable. And then review those guidelines: looking skills, listening skills, speaking skills, thinking skills, concentration skills. And then you're going to introduce the talking piece. Start with a low risk question. So something easy that's not hard to share, not hard to talk about. Again, just to get everyone comfortable with sharing. And then you're going to introduce the art prompt. So whatever activity you want your students to go back to their seats to complete, you're going to talk about the social emotional learning objectives. So today we will be exploring social awareness by creating a check-in triptych. So you want to use that vocabulary: social awareness, self-regulation, and teach your students the meaning behind all those and the why. And then step 5, decide if you need a quick, medium, or long engagement. So that's just, should this take a really short amount of time, or do we need a little bit longer, or is this something that we might not even finish in this class period? And you're just going to be clear on those expectations, and you're going to set reminders for when it will be time to return back to the circle. After your students have completed the art activity that you've given them, you're going to have them return back to the circle, and then that's when they're going to share. So we want our students to be comfortable always. So this is an option if, some students might want to talk about their art piece. Um, some students might want to just, hold it up and show it and kind of let it speak for itself. And then some students might not feel comfortable enough to share it all, and that's okay. So circle time art, this was an activity, the check-in triptych. So on side A, you would have your students use lines, shapes, and colors to represent what they're feeling right now. And then on side C, you would have them use lines, shapes, and colors to represent how they would like to feel. And then B, on the inside, is how do we get there? How do I get from feeling this way to this way? So on side B in the middle, you would have your students use lines, shapes, and colors to represent how they're going to get there. So this is just an example. If you have a student that maybe is feeling a little worried about something, maybe a test or something's coming up, you would have them draw what they're feeling, how they want to feel, and then in the middle would be what can I do to get there? So maybe it's take deep breaths. Maybe it's go to the calming center. Maybe it's I need to take a quick walk. Ways to engage our students when talking about art. So notice the details because our students work really hard on their art and a lot of the times they take it very seriously and they want us to notice the details, right? They want us to talk about how hard they worked. Invite self-reflection. Can you tell me more about your picture? What comes to mind when you look at your artwork? Does it remind you of anything? Avoid what is it. So that kind of goes back to we always have our students bringing us artwork. And so we should try to stay away from well, it looks really good, but what is it? Let's focus more on how hard they worked and their details or asking them reflection questions. Invite storytelling so we can have them tell us if there's a story that goes with their artwork and comment on the effort. So instead of saying, what is it? Oh, it's so detailed. I can tell you spent so much time on this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then mirror, you look proud of what you made. Or sometimes in our art classrooms, um, we have students that are really frustrated because it doesn't look the way they thought it should look, or they might be comparing themselves with a peer. And so they might not be super happy about it. So you can just invite them to talk about it. And then always say thank you because that reinforces the relationship and interest in the child. Next, we have self management. Self management is an important skill that helps us manage our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors so that we can make good personal choices for ourselves in different environments. So, obviously, this is a wonderful skill to teach our students as well. And we want them to, take control of their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They can have thoughts and feelings, but I know I even tell my 5-year-old, you are allowed to feel that way, but it doesn't excuse certain behaviors. So that's something that we can teach our students through self management. And that kind of leads us into trauma informed practice that kind of goes hand in hand with social emotional learning. So, how do they compare? The three components of trauma informed practice is safety, building relationships, and emotional regulation. So, those kind of go hand in hand with our 5 social emotional learning competencies. Emotional regulation, the ability to recognize and manage different emotional states. Again, this is something that we have to teach our students, our kids, or they're going to come up with ways on their own that might not be the best ways to deal with certain emotions. It's similar to a thermostat. It's okay to kind of have your emotions go up and down, but how are we going to behave with those emotions? Foundational skill for healthy development. Babies and young children need help regulating. Ways to build emotional regulation would be to recognize how am I feeling? This is how I'm feeling. This is why. And then opportunities for co regulation, developing a mindful practice, and then tactile activities that promote sensory or kinesthetic engagement. So we have our trauma informed practice with our social emotional learning, and we can help with our artistic practice. A paradigm shift. One instead of thinking of one size fits all. I'm sure as educators, you guys have seen this in your classroom where all we see are all these behaviors and we don't really see what's actually happening. Why are they hurting others? Why are they angry? Why are they lying? So a lot of the time that stems from some sort of trauma. So we just have to dive a little bit deeper and try to figure out, okay, they have these negative behaviors. What do they need? What can I teach them? What skill can I teach them to learn how to deal with these negative behaviors that they're feeling? And then taking an individualized approach to meet needs of our students. I know that's hard sometimes when we have a classroom full of kids, but in the long run, I think if we would take the time to try to have that individualized approach in the long run, we're going to build that relationship and that connection with those students, and it's going to help them and us. So the iceberg kind of goes back to that. Keeping your cool during art making time isn't easy when there are many behaviors that can heat up our frustration. So, like we talked about earlier, we have students that you could even maybe say are perfectionists and they want their art to be look a certain way, and when it doesn't, they have that frustration. Um, so it looks like a negative behavior, but what kind of feeling or emotion are they really having and why? So if they're critical of art with themselves and others, or they will not stop when it's time to stop, they might have some self-criticism, doubt, shame. So that's when we can try to cheer each other on in our classroom and talk about how it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and we can, those are happy mistakes. It may have made your art even better and you didn't realize it. Everyone can join in with frequent time reminders for those students. I'm sure even in a classroom that is not art, we always have that student, just give me one more minute, just give me one more minute. I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished. So if we set those reminders with a timer, I think that would help. And then creating a safe space for unfinished work. So I know I have like a wall in my classroom that it's a work in progress, so that when you have those students that are super frustrated because they didn't have enough time to finish, okay, this is a work in progress. We can come back to it. And then asking for approval after every step. That's just them measuring up to others and seeing themselves as bad in comparison. We know, especially with the way things are today with social media and technology, our students, our children are constantly comparing themselves to others. So when it feels like they're asking after every problem in a math classroom, or after every single step you're giving them in your art classroom, that's really what it is. They're just needing your approval. And then throwing materials, fidgeting, dropping things, disrupting. This can be a dysregulation in their body. They're not feeling calm, or they're getting frustrated. So that's when we can take a quick break. Let's all take a big deep breath. Just try to get them to calm down. And then not following the directions or refusing the activity. They may be feeling forced, or they may just not have the confidence. They're not feeling it. They're not having the courage, or they feel like they don't have what it takes to complete it. Just another quick question, just to kind of keep you thinking how you can incorporate this into your classroom. How do you include self-regulation techniques in your class, and how do you tweak them to fit different students? So we know, like the paradigm shift, not we don't have one size fits all. So how can, you might have certain students that certain activities don't, or skills that you're trying to teach them don't work in a certain way. So you have to kind of tweak it to fit their needs. Okay, so that leads us to a neuro doodle, and I don't know if you guys have paper or pencil. You could totally do this. It doesn't take much, if you wanted to, but this is one of my all-time favorite activities to do with our students. So you would just have a piece of paper, and then you would have your students start by drawing curvy lines from the center of your paper out to the edges. And then you're just going to have them start connecting those lines with other curved lines. And then by the end, they can either leave it black and white, or they can add color. This is one of those activities I would set a timer for. I know last year I help out with test prep, and I was working on some math with some sixth graders, and they were just getting so frustrated. And I said, okay, they were familiar with the neurodoodle, so I said, okay, let's take 2 minutes. They already had their paper and pencils we were working on. I said, take a little piece of your paper at the top right hand corner and um, draw a square. We're going to take 2 minutes to do a neurodoodle, just to kind of get us back in the zone. Let's just take a quick break. And so you could do it that way, or any way that fits best for your classroom. The benefits of the neurodoodle: it reduces stress and anxiety. It improves emotional regulation. It boosts focus and mental clarity. It encourages creativity and self discovery. And I will tell you, every class I've done this with, um, kindergarten all the way up to sixth grade. Now, they didn't all look the same. No, no one size fits all. But I would just play some relaxing music, and you could hear a pin drop while they were working on this activity. They loved it. They actually asked me, when are we going to do that neurodoodle again? So that's a really good activity. Then we have our calming kit. I'm sure if you have like a little sensory, I know our school has a sensory room for students that may have certain feelings that can go in there to calm down. But this is just a calming kit. Um, you can put anything that applies to you or your classroom or you think would work best for your students. But for this one, just to give you an idea, you can put a dry erase board and a marker, twisty pencils, erasers, markers, a stretchy person, stencils, paper, whatever you feel would be best for your classroom. And then we can use that. Okay, let's take a minute with the calming kit. Calming kit. Let's go over to the corner and see what we have in here. And you could even set a timer to help them with that. That leads us to our little book of calm. I've done this a few different ways. Um, you could do this on just paper, and I'll show you an example, or you can make the book. I did this with first grade, and I learned that I didn't like to make the book with first grade because they had trouble cutting this middle part. So after that, I just started kind of doing it on paper. But this little book of calm, it brings awareness of what we find calming. And if we know what we find calming, then we can help regulate our emotions and make better choices when we can think of things that make us feel calm when maybe we're having a certain emotion. So it's just all about the five senses. I actually thought this was a great lesson with kindergarten and first grade just to help teach those five senses and kind of incorporate more art with that. So again, you just need any kind of drawing tool. Um, so you could use this little book if you wanted to, but basically you just have your students think of the five senses and what when they think of those five senses, what would bring them some kind of relaxed feeling that would calm them down? So here's an example. For hearing, the rain calms me down. For touch is a fuzzy blanket. To see would be the beach. To taste would be tea or hot cocoa, and then to smell would be jasmine. And again, if you did make this book with maybe some of your older students, you could have them keep that in their desk or their backpack, and then let's get out our little book of calm. Relationship skills, having healthy relationships means that we are able to give and receive support from others. Creating healthy relationship takes work, but feels really good. Um, why are attachment relationships important? We know that it's super important to build relationships with our students, our family. The more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. So, relationships in school environments, we know that sometimes our students come to school and maybe they don't have the best home life at home. Maybe they come to school and they need that schedule. They need a stable place to learn and build those relationships with their teachers or their friends or their classmates. So it's super important that we invest our time in building those relationships. Something as simple as greeting at the door can help build relationships. And I feel like as educators, we also know that if we can make connections with our students and build positive, effective relationships with them, it's easier that if they do have a meltdown or if they are having some sort of emotion, it's easier for us to help them. So trauma informed practice, the restorative practices, and social emotional learning all can be connected back to art. The importance of teacher student relationships. Again, we know we want to always build good relationships with our students. It creates a more positive classroom environment. Students will be, again, they want to please you. You know, if you have a good relationship with your students, they are willing to go that extra mile for you. They are willing to put in their best work, their best effort to please you. It reduces dropout rates. It can increase caregiver and parental involvement, and it's just better socially and emotionally for our students. Um, so obviously, we always want to have good relationships with our students, but we also want our students to have good relationships with each other. And I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with Kagan, but I know Kagan is really beneficial for teaching students to have good relationships with their peers. So peer relationships in the classroom supports social emotional development. They're willing to learn from one another more if they have better relationships. It keeps them more engaged. It creates a sense of belonging, and then it reduces bullying. So if they're connecting and building relationships with one another, you're probably going to have less problems with bullying or students being picked on or students not liking one another. Attachment and bonding with art. So, first, we can build our social skills, emotional intelligence, cognitive skills. It increases confidence, and then it's understanding self and others. So, we can look at other our peers' art, and it can give us a better understanding of them and how they're feeling. So that's always helpful. And one more activity. I think there's one more after this one, but it's called the meaningful meal, and this was so fun. Um, so understanding that everyone has different experiences that affect the way they think, feel, and act is important in building social awareness and healthy relationships. Food and certain meals can have a lot of significance or importance to a person. These meals can include important memories or traditions that shape a person's identity. So, the materials, paper, or journal, drawing tools, and then what's optional is if you have some old magazines that they can kind of take clips of, or even if it's your older students, you can have them get on Google and print out some of the items they would want for their meal. But you would have them just think quietly. We call it thinking time, and my students will do this to show that they're really thinking about it. Give them some time to think, and then you can get out your anchor chart with your littles maybe and make a list of foods that we all like or that we have all eaten. Um, and then why just have them think, why is this important to my family? What does this mean for my family? And then you would just have them either draw a plate with a fork and a little knife, or you could, again, if with your little ones, you could have the template already made for them and they can just draw in. And here are some examples. So, if you have the time and materials, you can go all out and let them use their construction paper, or like I said, have them with your older students print out from, some Google images of their meal, or you can just have them draw it right on. And this student drew the plate on, I think this was maybe third grade, but with your little ones, you can just have that template already made for them. And so you would just have them pick a meal that would be represent kind of them, their family, and then you could let them share with a partner or their table or the classroom why it's significant or why it's an important meal. Every Thanksgiving we have this, and this, and another student, wow, we've never had deviled eggs or whatever it may be. And it's also about building those relationships, just getting to know one another better. Okay, and the last one is responsible decision making. I know I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get through this. Responsible decision making helps us live in harmony within our community so that we can make choices about how we want to be in the world. It helps us contribute to the world we want. This helps us contribute to our classrooms as well. What kind of, if I do this, let's make this decision. How is it going to affect my peers? How is it going to affect my classroom? So that leads us to our last activity. These are called touchstones, and they're not actually stones, more of just a representation. But a touchstone is a great tool to help guide us in making good personal decisions. A touchstone can represent our values, beliefs, and things that we always come back to when faced with a challenge. So, some questions you could ask your students before you start this. What are things that are important to you? When you are faced with a difficult decision, what do you always come back to? So you can just have your students draw this on a piece of paper, or again, with your little ones, have this template already made for them. And so you're just going to have your students think about a tough decision that they've had to make and how did it help them? And then maybe you could even do this with your community circle. Talk about the topic and the art activity, have them go do the touchstone, and then let's come back together and share. Um, and so here are some example or an example. This wasn't used with a template, just what's an important decision that you've had to make? How did you make that decision? What was helpful? Was it a responsible decision? So I got through that pretty fast, so I hope it was good. What are you already doing that you want to do more of in your classroom? What is something new you are excited to try, and what is something new you would like to modify? So I hope that you guys can take some of that back to your classrooms and use it, hopefully, maybe at least one or two things. Does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to share?
I loved everything. It was just so super engaging.
Yay.
It was so awesome. I really loved all the suggestions and all the activities. And I feel like a lot of those activities can be with a lot of different
hmm
categories of students. So that's really, really awesome. I love that so very much. It was so, so awesome.
Thank you, Tara, for presenting on this. I'm a school counselor and I have my
Oh,
art
yay.
therapy certification. I received that, oh my gosh, last summer. I'm not, and I just love when teachers incorporate social emotional learning into their classrooms, no matter what content you teach. It's something that you can connect. Building relationships is so important. So thank you for bringing this today to everybody. You did a great job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, you did wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and share the evaluation in the chat. So just make sure that you do fill that out for us, please. We appreciate that. And a friendly reminder to if you've learned something fun today, or if um, if you want to give a shout out to a presenter, please make sure you on X. We would really appreciate that. Hashtag KEDC, hashtag EdTech Unleashed. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what you've learned today, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to take these tools and take them into the classroom. As I've said before, we all have something to bring to the table. We all have different experiences. We all have different gifts and techniques, and it's just amazing to be able to share that amongst a group of like-minded individuals. So great job. I loved every session I've heard today. I wish I could have heard all of them. I know there was a ton to choose from. So um, great job, everybody.